granddaughter is just now turned 3 years old. And if I could think of the one thing that I would love to be able to teach her that would help her to be more successful in the world as she grows into young adulthood and beyond, it's the ability to tell where quality is. The ability to tell the difference between something that really is well done and something that's not. And in many ways, I think that's as much a matter of her understanding how creativity works as much as anything else. So I think that's what I would list as the answer to that question. You know, when I think about how that could be done, how to teach her that, whether it's something that should happen in school or at home, it's really something that has to happen in the family, I think. I think there's a role for school in it, in the sense of the information literacy aspects of that question. That there should be, you know, basic training in school about how to find things and how to recognize safe websites from not safe websites and that sort of thing, and just the sorts of things that you would normally expect for someone to learn in their academic training. But there's a larger sense to that I think really comes from a value at home around the notion of excellence and the expectation of excellence, not only in her, but also for her to be able to tell when others have done an excellent job. And so I put the burden on us at home. I visit a lot of schools, and I listen to a lot of the great thinkers of our day, people like Ken Robinson, who has spoken, I think, as eloquently as can be done on the notion of creativity in schools and the role of schools, in his view, in making creativity a not valued proposition in the academic equation. And that leads to the question of why is creativity important? Why should we care about what Ken has to say about this? I think it's vitally important. And when I think about how we learned about how the world happened, where's the next Newton going to come from? You know, when Newton realized that the mathematics of his day, the mathematics that could be delivered with the technology that they had, was insufficient to understanding how the world really worked, he invented a new mathematics. We spent 600 years studying how birds flap their wings. And I can't tell you how many hundreds, maybe thousands of experiments there were with wing flapping machines, and they never got us into the air. And the reason why is because there was no creativity in that study. It was simply replicating something that was already there, and that's why it didn't work. It really took an inspirational moment when Bernoulli discovered differential pressure, and all of a sudden people realized that what made birds fly was actually that. It was that differential pressure between the bird's wings in the air. And then instantly we're in the air, and now it's like, you know, many people fly places all the time, and it's just a normal thing of doing it. Creativity is essential to being human, not only in the forms of the arts that help us to understand who we are and what it means to be human. I'm talking about the painting and sculpture and those sorts of expressions, but also in writing and literature. Those forms of creativity are very important, but creativity needs to permeate every aspect of what we learn in school. People need to know that science can't proceed without creativity, that math can't proceed without creativity, that creativity is in fact the greatest resource we can create. And so I'm Ken Robinson's biggest fan. You know, thinking deeper on the question of schools and how we can get at that preservation and flourishing of creativity, I think there is a role for technology, but not in the way that we normally think about it. The way that technology is going to help creativity flourish is when technology becomes like air. when it becomes so natural to think about using a tool that you don't have to think about using the tool, then it's really going to be something that supports technology. Until we get there, I worry that it actually might have the opposite effect. But for example, imagine a student in high school, that has to do a project in history, and if that student just automatically began to think of how he could reach out via the network to contact subject matter experts, maybe via Skype at a university across the country, or to think about putting together video, as a way of telling the story that he or she wants to tell, those sorts of things are going to help people be creative because they have more ways of expressing themselves. When technology becomes like a pencil or a piece of chalk, it's that simple to know how to use it, then we're going to really see it fueling creativity. And in many cases, it's already there. If you go to design schools or art schools, every student knows Photoshop. It's like air to them. And they're able to be very creative with it once they reach that point. That's what we need to try and get to with technology. The hottest technology right now is mobile devices, and particularly the category of smartphones. People are very excited about other sorts of mobile devices like the iPad, which I think are exciting for a different reason. But what it really is new is a device that you can carry in your hand that is always connected to the internet. A device that not only can receive information from the internet, but that can contribute information, video, text, audio, the entire palette of rich media, both up and down from the internet, in the hands of now 5 billion people on the planet is a pretty powerful notion. I'll be talking on Friday with a little story about this, about how it's just changed the way the news media think about emerging stories. And when we think about Iran or Haiti and stories that break overnight like that, there were no news crews in Haiti when the earthquakes came. All the video we got was on the ground. It had this raw, visceral quality to it that made the story even more impactful, I think. How that changes the way the world connects to each other, I think is going to be very profound. I think it's both going to make it feel smaller, that we're closer together, but it's also going to make us feel like we have more in common. So I have a great amount of optimism around what's going to happen with mobiles. The biggest thing is that it's just everywhere. The second aspect that makes that interesting is the convergence of mobiles with the internet. The cell networks are taking the internet into places that hardwires will never get to. So you can look into Central Africa or the outback in Australia and just compare where the 3G networks go with where even the electric grid goes. And it's instantly obvious that mobile is a hugely impactful force across all society. Education's lagging a little bit in the uptake of it, but it'll get there. I think there's a really good reason why education lags a little in the adoption of new technologies. Education's a process that very much is about transferring generations, learning from one generation to the next generation. And in that sense, it's very hard to ignore the fact that if the parents don't understand what the kids are learning, they can't be helpful in that. And they're a big part of that equation. So it takes a little time for a new technology to come into education. That's frustrating sometimes because we see the potential in some of these new things and think, wow, could we get that right away? But it's also understandable in the sense that this is a big social enterprise with a history that goes back as long as there have been humans. It's not a boat that you can turn very easily. But once it becomes part of accepted practice, it's very much part of accepted practice. And I think we just need to give some of these things time, and we'll see them come in really powerful ways. Mobile technology's got some challenges when it comes to formal education. Now we're seeing it already in universities in some big high-profile ways. I could list two: Abilene Christian University and Duke University in the United States. Both of them require every student to have a smartphone. In those two cases, they're actually iPhones. And that is enabling all sorts of interesting sorts of things to happen in the way that students interact with each other in their informal study groups, but also in formal settings, how they access the learning management system on campus. It's just playing out in all sorts of interesting and many unexpected sorts of ways. When you look at primary and secondary, though, there's a huge obstacle to bringing mobile into the equation. And that's that teachers, by and large, regard telephones as a behavior issue. And most schools ban them. You're not allowed to have phones. If you're using your phone in class, the teacher will pick it up normally. We've got to get past that. A colleague of mine likes to say that we should think before we ban. I think it's really important that we do that. That, you know, maybe when phones a few years ago had a lot less capability than they do today, maybe it made sense. But today, to ignore the fact that every student can take video, that every student can produce a podcast in the field, that every student can access, not every student can access the internet, but 80% of them can, those are capacities that are hard to ignore. And not only that, these are devices the school doesn't have to maintain. These are networks the school doesn't have to build. Why would you not want to use them? Eventually it's going to become an economic case, and that's what's going to cause it to tilt, I think.